Hello, welcome to our second video in Module 3, and our focus, just to remind you, our focus in this module is to learn how to perform information gathering, both passive and active information gathering, as well as enumeration. It's difficult to perform each of these tasks separately. Most of the times they walk together, they hold hands, because it's a continuation. You're not actually going to differentiate whether you're performing passive information gathering, active information gathering, or enumeration. Basically, what you want to do is to gather information. Now, you have to know the techniques, the proper techniques that you should use in order to achieve that goal. So we discussed in our previous video, we discussed the meaning of each of these techniques, what you are actually doing. Here, we're going to actually see some resources that we have available in order to achieve this goal. So first of all, we want to take a look at the EDGAR website. And this is the URL, sec.gov/edgar/search/company search. Now, what is EDGAR? EDGAR is a project from the US Securities and Exchange Commission that will allow you to search for information about people and mostly companies, as you can see over here. So you can either search for someone's name or a company's name. Most of the times, you're going to be looking for a company's name. Now, what kind of information can you find here? Mostly financial information, although not only that, but mostly financial information. And you may tend to think, why would I want to gather some financial information? Well, because that can give you an idea of how well that company is doing, what types of clients they're dealing with, how big that company is, this kind of stuff. So as you already know, all types of information that you can gather will help you. So let me give you an example. If you take a look at the financials of a company, and obviously this is not a detailed financial description, but at least it can give you an idea of, for example, how big that company is. Well, if your target is a company that is very large, there is a very high probability that their staff is also large. They have many employees, which means that performing some social engineering may be easier. And why would that be? Well, because you can try, for example, to call the company saying, hey, I'm John from IT. Well, since the company has so many employees, that person that you are calling may not know John. And that person may think, okay, I don't know John from IT, but that's because we have so many employees and I can't remember, I don't know everybody. Whereas in a small company, the chances of doing that reduces a lot. Okay, so let's take a look at how EDGAR works. Actually, it's pretty simple, as all of the tools that we have here are simple as well. So let's just pick a company name, and let's say Netflix. Okay? When you type a company name, it will search on the fly for all companies that have that string. Okay, so probably this one, Netflix Inc. Let me click there and let's see what we have. Oh, okay, so we have here Netflix Inc., right? What this company does, so it's a services videotape rental company. It's located in California, and that's the company name. You have the business address. So just by looking at this here, you can already gather some information. Now, we have to remember that we have the white box methodology, the gray box methodology, and the black box methodology. If your client is is allowing you to have access to a bunch of information. So if the methodology here or the pen test that is being performed is a white box, obviously you don't need EDGAR. Now, if it's a black box, you have almost no information about that company. So just by doing this type of search here, you can already gather some information. And down here, you have a bunch of documents that were filed by that company to EDGAR, to the US Securities and Exchange Commission. So you can go through some of these documents and they will help you get an idea of about that company. It will give you more information. Okay, another very, very resourceful, very useful website, and this is just one of those websites, but what matters is the protocol. And this protocol is called Whois. And this is just one example of a Whois website. There are so many, and it may vary according to the country as well. So for example, in the United States, you have several websites that perform Whois. But if you're in, let's say, Australia, probably there is another company that is, or a government institution that takes care of the Whois protocol. Now, what is Whois? Whois search, domain name, website, and IP tools. What does it actually do? And you can see it right here. See website information. So once again, let's search for the same company, Netflix.com. Okay, let's do it a little bit different this time. Let's search for Microsoft.com. And I'll perform the search here. Okay, so here we see Microsoft.com. We have some register info, which usually is not that helpful, but if we scroll down, then we can gather some more information here. So name servers, these are the domain name servers that are responsible for that domain, Microsoft.com. So they have 4 domain name servers. And here, this is what is actually even more important, although this is important as well, because from here you can know how many DNS servers that domain has and what their domain servers are. But down here, down below, here is where you have the most important information. Okay, now I know the company's name, I know where it's located, I have the phone number, I have an email that I can try to contact, or I can even use this account here to perform. This is an example of enumeration, right? Now you have some specific information about that domain. Now, this is the registrant contact information. What about the administrative contact information? In this case, they're all the same, but there are situations where you have different people or different companies. For example, someone is responsible to admin the domain registration, the domain name registration, up here, registrant contact information, but the company has a separate administration. And also regarding technical issues, this is the person that should be contacted. Let's say a website is offline. Okay, so I should have the contact of the technical person responsible for that. So again, you're just gathering information and filtering the type of information that is actually going to be helpful for you. Okay, now observe that here we were also able to gather some technical information, right? So these are the domain name servers and these are their IP addresses. From here, I can either start performing some active information gathering or reconnaissance. We're not going to do this now, but this is an important information that we may use in the future during the reconnaissance phase and even during enumeration. Now, since we're still in the passive information gathering phase, we have to remember that the passive information gathering phase is done by executing techniques and resources that will not directly connect that domain servers, machines, active devices. So if I try, for example, to actively scan this IP address, I will be moving to the reconnaissance phase. That's not what I want to do so far. So far, the only thing that I want to do is to still work on the passive information gathering. But there are some tools that I can use according to this information that I have here. For example, we have some tools here, such as host. Let's say host www.microsoft.com, and we could do this on this IP here as well, or this name here. But let's just take a look at Microsoft.com, the web server. Now, what can I see when I use the host command? Okay, I can see that the machine called www that resides in the Microsoft.com domain is actually an alias for another machine that is in the EDGAR.net domain. Now, it's a subdomain. Microsoft is a subdomain residing within that other infrastructure there. And actually this edge domain www.microsoft.com-c-3.edgekey.net is an alias for another machine. So now here I can follow their structure of names to the end, to the very end, where I can see that machine actually has this IP address here. Oh, and this is also another very important information. That server actually has IPv6 address as well. Something that we'll talk about later on. Now, still working on domain names, another command that I have available, and actually we have many, but another one is dig. So, for example, the same result that I could gather here, I searched for Microsoft.com and it showed me, okay, these are their domain name servers. I can actually use dig whenever I want to work with domain names. So here I'm using Google's domain name server, at least one of those. So you use the @ to specify the domain name server that you want to use, to consult, to talk to. And I want to ask Google's domain name server about this other domain here, Microsoft.com. And what I want to ask is, what are the DNS servers of this domain right here? And I perform this search, and we can actually see that this information here match with this information right here. It's just another DNS search. Now, something very interesting about dig is that you can perform any type of search when it's related to domain names. For example, instead of using NS, I can use MX, which stands for Mail Exchange. And when I do that, I am actually going to see that this domain's Mail Exchange or SMTP server is this one right here, microsoft-com.mail.protection.outlook.com. I can see generic information about this domain, which is going to be very similar to performing a whois. There it is. So there are several tools that are very helpful. Now, I saw here, right here, for example, that Microsoft.com has this IP address right here, at least the web server, 104.115.148.63. And let's say that I want to know where this is. there are ways of searching for a geographical location, but this is not the moment, especially because when we used EDGAR, for example, or even the WHOIS, I was told that this company is in Redmond. Okay, now I don't want to know the geographical location, but I want to know the digital path to where this website resides. For that, I have the traceroute command. So here, I can see that from my machine to the location of that destination, this is where I'm going through, right? And in many situations, you may have some asterisks, as you can see here. That means that it's taking too long. It could time out. That was not the case here. But if it works, you're going to see step by step from your machine to that destination what are the servers or routers that are being used to establish that path. Now, most important thing here is to realize it's not actually the initial steps, leaving from my machine to the destination, but the last steps. Based on the last steps, I will be able to gather more information about their infrastructure, such as what is the ISP they're using. And once it enters their domain, their infrastructure domain, how many steps do I have to go through until I reach that server? But what is important here is msn.net. Starting from here, I can see that I enter the Microsoft network, which is a very, very complex infrastructure. So if this was my target, from here I would know, hey, okay, I'm gonna have a lot of work to do, but at least I also have many resources because I have many devices. It's a complex infrastructure, it gives you more options. So let me hit Ctrl+C here. Now, we've seen some tools that are very useful when performing passive information gathering. And another very helpful tool that we have available is the harvester. Now you can see here that I have my Kali Linux instance running here. It's very important that you have a Linux operating system running while doing this course, while training for the CompTIA PenTest Plus exam. And I would advise you to use Kali Linux. If you want to use, let's say, Slackware, if you want to use Debian, if you want to use CentOS, that's perfectly fine. The problem is you're going to have some additional steps while installing those tools. Kali Linux is a Linux operating system that already brings you many pen testing tools. Okay, so regarding the harvester is a tool that will help you search for information on different types of sources. For example, if I want to search for information about people that work at LinkedIn or that did some courses using LinkedIn, any type of association with LinkedIn. For example, I want to try to gather information of people that work at Netflix. Well, if people that work at Netflix, professionally speaking, they should have a profile in LinkedIn. So what could I do? I could perform that type of search. But first, let's take a look at the harvester's help. Observe here that you have a bunch of information. So this is how the syntax goes, okay? And we first have an introduction here. Table results already exists. That's because I already performed a search. But okay, some information about the harvester here. Then I have a bunch of options, and what we want to take a look at here is, let's say right here. I use -D to specify the domain name that I want to search for. Well, if you want to, it doesn't have to be a domain name. It can just be a string, let's say Netflix without .com. And I want to perform that search in this database here, this company's database, LinkedIn. These are the databases where I can perform that search. You even have all here that will actually run that search in all these databases right here. Obviously, it's going to take a very long time. So if I perform this type of search here, what is it going to do? It will search for people in LinkedIn that are at some point associated with Netflix. They mention Netflix in their profile at some point. So that's how you can use the harvester. Also a very resourceful tool. Also a tool that you should use to perform passive reconnaissance. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please go back and take a look at those websites, the resources that you have available in order to perform passive information gathering. See you in our next video. Thank you.